focus today is about sweeteners, sugar in particular, but also we need to reach out to the sugar replacement because it's just as bad or worse. So, and here's a quote by Shakespeare from King John, and I thought it was appropriate. So I thought I'd give you a little Shakespeare here.
All right.
All right. And I want you to pay attention to ages, because capitalized, AGE, is advanced glycation, things that happens in your stomach for the metabolic syndrome type stuff. Anyway, so some of the things I heard about vegan, and quite truthfully, since January, I have probably eaten meat 6 times, not, maybe 7 times, and the rest of it has been vegetarian. And in that, what has happened, and I know what, you know, this show and tell sort of, but I want to show you my leg, because this right, I had spots, I had spider veins and some other stuff and everything, and this one was so bad that it looked like it was a scab outside the skin, but it was underneath the skin. It was black and it was bubbled, and that's what it is now.
Wow. Good. Fantastic.
And it is strictly due to changing diet.
Oh, no.
Hallelujah.
Okay. But our focus today is part of something that I don't know if you guys recognize this chart. It's from a chart set that Dee had, and I stole it because it talked about sugar and it talked about some of the side effects and some of the correlations. So we're going to talk about the sugar, but Dee is the idea for this presentation. So,
All right, Dee.
God blessed.
this is the history, and you know, we heard about the government conspiracy on the mask and coronavirus and whatnot. But sugar, we used to eat about 2 to 4 pounds back in the 1700s. By 1776, it was 4 pounds of sugar. And then it kept ramping up until 1970, and something happened. The government got involved.
High fructose corn syrup.
What was going on there were 3 things that happened. It was a perfect storm. 3 things that happened. One is that Nixon wanted to be reelected. I am not a crook. But he wanted to be reelected, and food was an issue because the cost of food was really out of control. And so he was looking for a way to stop the roller coaster on food. Well, about that time, LDL was discovered. And they postulated the theory about LDL. Of course, the premise was wrong, because what they said was that LDL and fat were associated with one another. But they didn't run the test backwards to see that that was not the only thing that was associated with this. And by the way, LDL has 2 forms. There's a dense form and a buoyant form. And the buoyant form is good, but when they take your test for LDL, they don't know, they don't separate them. So your LDL count can be good, bad, whatever it is. It's not until you actually get in and know the specifics of your LDL as to whether that's why all of us are different. Anyway, so the USDA, AMA, and the American Heart Association gave fat a bad rap, okay? And they were looking for, and then in 1966, before this happened, the Japanese invented or discovered or created high fructose corn syrup. And so by taking that cheap high corn fructose and putting it in the food, it stabilized the food prices. And President Nixon won office. Of course, that was instituted a little bit later, but that's what was being worked on. So in '73, that's when they introduced high high fructose corn syrup to our food. Okay, so you can see that, and that's represented right here by this introduction. Now, there's another chart right here, and you'll notice some people talk about, hey, we shouldn't have a problem because we peaked on sugar back in 1999. Yeah, but look what happened. Okay, but obesity kept going up. Well, did you know that 50% of your food that has sweetener in it is not sugar? Okay, so they just found another source to do it, and it's doing the same thing. Okay. Okay, so it was the adulteration of this food supply based on a bad premise, and so we've already talked about the political power, the faulty premise, the timely discovery, and so this is the two types of LDL that I was talking about, and so they just got it wrong, and then we've always thought that because the energy thing, in plus out, you know, so calories in, calories out. Well, exercise, there you go, do it with exercise. But it will take you 5 hours to run off one cookie.
Wow. Sure.
So, exercise is not the answer, but exercise is part of the answer. Okay, and we'll get to that later. Anyway, so the addition of fructose into our, and why? Because when they took all that fat out, all the taste out of it and everything, it was like cardboard. You may remember some of those early days when they put out those crackers and said, "Ugh, what is that?" You know. So what they did was they jammed in the sweeteners and all kinds of flavoring and everything, so you can't tell. Anyway, and it's a browning agent, you know. So like sugar gets burnt and everything. Well, it's doing the same thing to your arteries. You know that browning that you have, that browning on your arteries isn't a good thing. Okay, so there's the correlation there. Anyway, so but the reason for doing it was that it extended the shelf life of all the food, because the fats and the fiber is what's perishable. So in addition to removing the fat, they removed the fiber too. Now, sugar in nature comes with fiber, and the fiber helps it to digest slowly, so it is more suitable to our bodies. That's the way God made it. Okay, so just using Coke as an example, we got the 1915 6.5 ounce version, you know, 55 went to 10 ounces, and 88 and 60 went to 12 ounces. 88, you get the supersize stuff, and that the ounce represents the amount of, or the pounds represents the amount of sugar per year, or sugar alternate that is accumulated. And why do they put so much sugar in things? It hides the taste of salt. So you drinking a 55 so 55 megagrams of salt is in a medium-sized Coke, you know, and you would know that because the sugar plays tricks on our tongue and we can't tell it's there.
Wow.
Okay, so where's sugar and its extended family? It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And it's hidden. You know, there's that added sugar, the little, so you have to read the label to understand. And that's if it wasn't wordsmith. Because, you know, a lot of the reports that say sugar's not bad for you at all. Glucose to produce this glycation, this advanced glycation that takes place in the body that will do things like metabolic syndrome and those type of things. We've already covered the browning of the arteries, the plaque, and the discoloration. What what fructose does is it's ignored by some of the stuff that's in the body during the digestion process, so you can't process your food. And what happens to unprocessed food? It just stays there. And and fructose ingested, 30% of it becomes fat. That when it hits not processable fat that will just stay there, and so and a high sugar diet is a high target. It stays in your body, and it will linger there and rot and create other kinds of problems. Okay, so I mentioned, okay, so fermented sugar, ethanol, has all kinds of, we know that alcohol has all kinds of effect, right? How do you make alcohol? By fermenting sugar, right? Okay, so you've got this sugar. If you eat too much of it, it will ferment, and it will create that ethanol effect. And of the 13 maladies associated, diseases or whatever associated with alcohol, with ethanol, 9 of those are attributed to sugar, to the fructose, to the whatever that substitute is. So this is a chronic poison. This is poison over time. And the FDA does not address those. Okay, so this chart right here shows you some of the indicators of level of sweetness. Shows you that fructose is right up there at 173. Shows you that glucose is down here at 74. So you've doubled the sweetness, almost tripled it. And because it's not recognized in the body and everything, it doesn't shut off hunger. It makes you crave more, and those type of things. So right now, the annual consumption is 63 pounds per person.
Wow.
And then with them putting salt in it, you would want to drink more.
Well, and like I said before, the same thing with sugar. It hides the fact that the salt is there. You wouldn't know it was there, and you're going to consume that salt too. If you've ever looked at some of these drinks, some of them just sky high on the sodium count, Okay, and so what's the difference? Here we have sucrose and alcohol, and you can see, so there's not much difference, but there is a difference. They're not all the same. And why are they not the same? Well, because you might have something like this. You have a beer belly, and you have cheeks and everything. So there is a difference in the way that the body processes it when the body doesn't understand what it is that it's got. Okay, and so this is your intestines, and I'm not going to go through it was very complicated, and my mental retention here was a little weak. So, and maybe it might have been a little too much anyway. But basically what I'm going to tell you is, food comes into the intestines and everything, and the body will process what it recognizes. And then this big, large thing down here, okay, so you've got this insulin and everything, and it's doing it to the extent that it can on what it receives. We are what we eat. And but if you're eating stuff with artificial sweeteners and fructose and whatnot, it'll come down here to be processed and can't be processed, and then just out as fat. So all that's going on, so this is what that looks like, but I meant to delete that from my, yeah, I didn't get there. But, okay, so it can't get out of the liver except via the hormones, and the hormones don't recognize it, like the ghrelin that we mentioned, and the essentials that would recognize, that the insulin would recognize, so the leptin that in insulin that works for the insulin to serve as the appetite suppressor. It's not working because it doesn't recognize this stuff. And it turns that sugar, that particular sugar, to fat. Okay. So this just shows that all this stuff is going on. It's affecting your mind. It's affecting your stomach. So you've got a craving going on, much like you would with alcohol addiction, any kind of addiction. So it's a difficult thing to people who are already there have a real difficult time getting away from it, from obesity or whatever standpoint, because there's an addiction associated with the sweeteners that we're using. Okay, so these are some of the problems associated with sugar and fructose. And when we're talking sugar, we're talking excess sugar. But you know, excess sugar is individually dependent because we are different from one another. Okay, so this non-alcoholic liver disease is almost the same thing as alcoholic liver disease as far as the way it works on the body, but the source is different. The source is fructose and artificial sweeteners and excess sugar. And what I was saying about excess sugar is it's very dependent. I mean, is one lump too many type thing. The AMA and the American Heart will give you a number, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. Well, you know, we've already covered that. You have to take it understanding how your body processes, because your 10 may not be somebody else's 10. Okay. So all of these things are associated with, and there's quite a list of them. This is the mental illness, the depression, and all that kind of stuff. We know that aspartame has this problem. We've seen that. We've seen that. We've seen that, and it's been a more immediate. So FDA actually did something about it. But these others, they're calling them GFAS, generally acceptable for food, or something like that. Generally acceptable as food, or something like that. Yeah, maybe. But it's, once again, the aspect about whether it's a chronic contributor or whether it's an acute. If it's an acute poison, FDA will slam it. If it's chronic, there's another report that the sugar industry, or the sweet artificial, you know what? I think this report is the way we should go, don't you? Yeah, okay.
Very true.
Oh, okay. So, how do you stop? Because they are addicted. They're addicted. How do you stop? Okay, well, you've got to drink more water. You need to distance yourself from soda, because soda is one of the worst. Avoid getting hungry. But understand that you have already, if you've been drinking this stuff, you've already compromised your system, and it's going to take it a while to adjust to be able to do what it's supposed to do, because it no longer recognizes ghrelin, it no longer recognizes, leptin's no longer recognizing what it's supposed to do. And so it's a retraining that has to take place. Need to opt for a tasty treat, much like the great cookies we had tonight, the lemon pie. Great stuff. Try an alternate to soda. Now, this is two different theories, okay? These came from two different sources. So I pulled up this intervention thing. This intervention thing is more draconian, but it's probably more effective too, because here it says get rid of all your sugared liquids, only water and milk. Of course, we know that the milk is dairy, and So water. If you're trying to break it.
Uh-oh, wait 20 minutes for your second bowl.
Yeah. Eat your carbohydrate with food. You know, all those fruits that God gave us, they come with their own fiber.
Yeah.
So it's got built-in fiber. It's great. Okay, the wait 20 minutes for the second important, and we've already got Willis. Hammer on that one. Thank you, Willis. You need to bring your in this trying to beat this thing, bringing your screen time. That's sitting down at a computer or sit down time, and exchange it minute for minute for what you do. Of course, you know that. But what does exercise do? What exercise does, and I thought it was in here, but I didn't see it, or maybe my mouse got ahead of me and we skipped a chart. But what the exercise does, exercise is not for getting rid of weight. How many of you knew that?
It boosts your immune system.
It boosts your immune system. It enhances your skeletal. So all those hormones that are in your body and everything, it gets them ramped up. Okay, so that they can do their job. So this exercise that we're talking about, you don't need it to lose weight because you can never keep up with it. If you I made the comment about the 5 hours for the cookie. You know, it takes almost 5 days if you're foolish enough to eat a Big Mac. So how do you get ahead of yourself if that's all it takes, you know, to put that on? So and that figure might have been off, but it was extreme. When I saw it, I said, "Whoa!" And my sources for this are Robert Lustig, who wrote Sugar, the bitter truth of sugar. He also wrote another book that I'm going to get into, not today, but that I'm going to read. Also, Dr. Michael Greger, who is a vegan and has a lot of. He now has by the way, he now has a new thing called Redoing, and he is a vegan, and he is. I had no idea until I started listening to our sessions. Lustig, Barnhart, Neil Barnhart, Michael Greger, and how bad dairy is for you, and what it does. So, and the last thing I want to leave you with, this better strategy was offered for both maintenance, and I think probably you can finesse it and make it work for the intervention as well. But avoiding treats of any kind and focus instead on eating whole foods that are full of fiber. You'll ingest a rainbow of nutrients, feel full for a longer period of time, and be naturally eating lower calorie foods that come from the earth. It's better for you and it's better for the planet. And the last thing I saw in all this research and everything was this really great quote about why fiber is so important regarding obesity. And that is, when God made the poison, oh, that's supposed to be not mad, made the poison, he packaged it with the antidote, fiber. Discussion?